It's Not Another Buffalo Podcast, hosted by three of the most underqualified sports personalities this side of the canal. With John.
There's no way in hell that I can leave that in, right?
You don't think so?
Well, to quote Rage Against the Machine, what better place than here? And, what better time than now?
And Brando.
We have this trust built on, whatever it is, like Bibles and gold bricks and whatever Brandon Bean's drinking over there.
Welcome back to Not Another Buffalo Podcast. I'm John. I'm here with my buddies Pat and Brando and special guest Anthony Marino. Got him back on the show. Super excited to have him. Before we get into things, I want to let you guys know this episode is brought to you by Small City Realty. If you're looking to buy, sell, or manage property in Western New York, our guy is Zach Korzelius. You can contact him at Zachary at smallcityrealty.com, and you can call him at 585-409-1088. That's 585-409-1088. So boys, draft is in 2 days. The test is coming up. None of us have studied except for Anthony. So Anthony, we are going to be peeking over your shoulder for this test, asking you all the questions, but you love this time of year, right? Yeah. So you just got back from London too. How was that?
London was great. I was telling you guys before we recorded, went there for the Bills-Jaguars game during the 2023 season, which, the game was a disappointment, but everything else was just fantastic. And that had been my first time. So the chance to kind of just go back and just kind of experience everything else with a lot less Buffalo Bills fans around the city was pretty remarkable. But listen, if you guys are banking on me for all this draft stuff, we might be a little screwed on the test. But, between the four of us, I think we'll be okay.
Did you write your article on the plane or in London that you wrote?
No, I didn't write it then. I did it after I got back. So if there were any typos or errors, it was probably because of jet lag and the time difference and pieces like that. But it just, when you come up to the draft, you can only do so many mock drafts and things like that. Or, I'm not one to break down film. So a lot of times it just comes to, what my perspective is. I hope that other Bills fans can relate to it enough. And at least so far, it seems to be pretty good.
It was a good article. I thought it was. And I know there's some good editing over there that makes sure
Buffalo
gets
Rumblings
checked out. Yes.
Thank goodness for Matt and the team over at Buffalo Rumblings, because without them, it would just look like a jumbled mess.
Well, let's go ahead and just dive right into it. I kind of really want to know, I've heard some other people talk about this, but do you think this draft is going to be any different than a typical Brandon Bean draft? Do you think the approach has changed at all because of this team, because of the roster, because of the prospects available, where they're picking, any of that? Or is it just kind of like just another Brandon Bean year?
It's so hard to tell too. And I don't say that as any sort of a cop out, because, and you listen to enough podcasts and radio interviews and you read enough articles, right? You've got Dane Brugler from The Athletic saying he's only got a first round grade on 12 players this year in the draft, which I got to say this too. This always kind of cracks me up when it's like, oh, we only have 18 first round grades. It's like, is there ever a year where someone says we have 40 first round grades on it?
There should be. There
should be. 2004 draft
where it's there's only 18 first rounders. Think back to high school. Maybe you should be grading on a curve or be doing something
right.
If your criteria, and that's not he does phenomenal work. All these guys do. It's just one of those pieces where it's who are those 18 players and what does it really look like? But, when you talk about with Brandon Bean too, I think he's always had this reputation of oh, here's a guy that he wants to trade up to get his guy. But Sal Capaccio was saying on WGR the other day, I think the last 7 trades he's made, he's traded back, right? So between, Keon Coleman trading back twice to get James Cook, other moves, trading a pick 1 year to move back to the next year. So it's kind of this reputation that he had very early on is kind of gone by the wayside. And again, you can look at some of those trades too. And Josh Allen, you had to do it. Tremaine Edmonds was someone that they, most definitely wanted. Kyer Elam, that was a victory lap for you guys a couple years ago in making that prediction. But, that's one that didn't work out. And Dalton Kincaid, you still wait to see. So it's always funny, though, because they'll put out the embedded videos after the draft. And then you'll see the him anxiously pacing or making a phone call to someone trying to trade up. But I have a feeling this year it might be, what was it, 2021, where they drafted Gregory Rousseau, where they just stood pat and they were at pick number 30 and they just stayed there. And it's just hard to project right now, especially when you're picking that late in the first.
Yeah. So let's say they do stand pat at 30. Is there like a prospect in your mind? And I know you have, you feel free to, take the one straight out of your article that we read earlier, but is there a dream prospect at 30 that you think has a high chance of being available that kind of fits into what you think Brandon Beane likes?
Yeah, I mean, the guy I keep coming back to is Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle for University of Michigan.
Go Blue.
And he seems to be like almost a draft crush of most of Bills Mafia this year, although it does seem to have kind of switched up a little bit with the cornerback position most recently. But, for me, I think you look at someone like Kenneth Grant, I think not having that one technique that can get to the quarterback and kind of like collapse the pocket a bit. I love Daquan Jones, but he has not been the same player since he came back from the injury. And this is the last year of his contract. He's 33 years old, and you really don't have anyone else on the roster that can play that position. So that's the name that I keep coming back to because he's that blend of size, but it's not like he's just a run stuffing defensive tackle. And I think that's what some people think that he is. And, I get frustrated when the Bills just get run up the middle, like time after time after time, where it seems to happen too often during some matchups. But that's the guy I keep coming back to. He brings kind of a little bit of inconsistency, but you can look at that and say, all right, he's 21 years old. Like, he's got time to develop and to be next to a veteran like Daquan Jones, maybe on a day-to-day basis could kind of get some of that and be effective. So that's the guy I keep coming back to, but it has been tough because like usually this time of year, there's a guy I've got my heart set on and it's just not there this year. And that part is a little bit tough because you just look at it and you're just like, I don't know, maybe this is what happens when you're a good football team. Like you're picking at 30 and you don't have to like have your heart set on, this quarterback or this guy's going to make the complete difference. It's like you get someone that can come in and, and can contribute. Your team's going to be better.
For sure.
With what you said there, how the Bills with Kaiir Elam and, they move up a little bit, Dalton Kincaid, they move up a little bit. We have seen whether it is best player available or drafting for need. You talk about the roster that the Bills have right now with defensive tackle, not having a lot of guys that can play the position straight up as it is. That makes me a little bit worried when you look at that Kaiir Elam pick, having the Chiefs jump up right in front of you and take Trent McDuffie, right? How much better that worked out for Kansas City than it has worked out for the Bills with Elam. My only thought about it is I like Kenneth Grant as a prospect. All right. I like Michigan, that's my college team, but maybe Brandon Beane kind of, I don't want to say pigeonholed himself here to force himself to have to take a D tackle in the first round instead of taking best player available. I mean, Kenneth Grant, if he gets to 30, would be considered a slide, right? My only worry is, did Brandon Beane kind of force himself here to take a D tackle due to the roster construction, maybe free agency, those guys, Michael Hoyt, the PED suspensions. I feel like he might have backed himself in a little bit here. And I feel like Brandon Beane has been pretty good taking best player available, but that time I thought that he drafted for need was with Kaiir Elam and it just didn't work out well. And it's just not a strategy that I love from a drafting standpoint that I know nothing about. But that's my first thought of when I think of D tackle or DN right away. Because if you have a guy like Nick Emenwuri on the board or Matthew Golden, I know D tackle is a huge need. So maybe that, if it's close, maybe they reach a little bit to fill that need instead of taking the best player available. And that's the only thing.
My question for you, Brando, would be like, can you even remember like a good defensive tackle nose guard for the Buffalo Bills that's not named Kyle Williams or Marcel Darius? Can you think of one? Like, I mean,
I was gonna say Daquan Jones in his prime, but again, like Anthony said, he hasn't been the same player since he came back from that injury.
Yeah, I think of, I don't know, like hurt Jordan Phillips or like Star Latulele or I don't know.
Darius had that season here where he put up 10 sacks and he had a lot of issues off the field that he was going through and kind of trying to deal with. But I don't know. I want
and don't sleep on Dwayne Carter either. I feel like he was hurt most of the season.
That's true. Dwayne Carter, he caught the wrist cold that everybody had during that like 3-week stretch where everybody's wrists were injured. And
but I get what Pat's saying though, because it's like no real investment has been made at that one technique from a draft standpoint since Harrison Phillips in 2018,
right?
And did a decent job, right? It wasn't, I mean, it was a 3rd round pick, not a major draft investment. But Brandon, to your question, and it's funny because I was saying the exact same thing, but I was saying it about cornerback up until they re-signed Tre'Davious White. And I know a lot of people will be like, listen, signing Trey White, whatever shape he's in, right? He's not the same player. It's a 1-year contract. You don't change your strategy based on that. But before that took place, I was like, good gosh, you have to take a cornerback with your first pick. You have to. Like, you don't have anything that you can do. No disrespect to Dane Jackson. Like, you don't have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer back there before, where you could almost put anyone in at CB2 and they could be effective because you had this fantastic duo behind you. So I was saying all that about cornerback, where then I shifted, and now you're kind of saying the same thing, but it's just about defensive tackle. But I do think with Trey White / Dane Jackson and with Daquan Jones, you're not in a position where if you don't do it, even in the 1st and 2nd round, that at least there's a floor that is decent enough for you. I mean, it's not, perfect. It's not what you want to be, but I don't feel like he's in that position in 2022 because, I mean, everyone was mocking a cornerback to the Bills that year because it was it was a glaring need. And thank God for Christian Benford.
Right.
The other part, I was just looking, what's his name? Dwayne Carter, right? They got him last year after that move down, that move back. He flashed a tiny little bit, I guess. But the quote that Brandon Beane said a few years ago, and when he's like, you fill the needs in free agency so you can draft best player available. And I thought that was maybe earlier on in his tenure. And it was interesting to see that pick of Kyer, and it was interesting to see how his boards have fallen, and you take Dalton Kincaid and the success of the tight ends after Kincaid was taken. So I don't know. I feel more weary about these higher picks than I do about the middle round picks. And it's nice to see that we got them stacked there a little bit in the later, those 2 2nd rounders, and whether he uses them to move up or move back or whatever. I would be happy with Kenneth Grant though, as the D tackle pick. Like you said, we haven't invested enough in it. And the thing about the CB2, did we go into any of these seasons, the 13 seconds game, Levi Wallace getting picked on, how many of these big time games were we like, oh, we needed a better CB2? And I feel like you said, though, we don't have Poyer and Hyde back there. So is Rapp and Bishop enough to say we can cover our CB2 there? Or, you take a guy like Nick Amon-Worry that can play both, maybe a little bit of safety, a little bit of corner, a little bit of linebacker, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of flexibility. I'm curious to see, when we talk next week, how we feel about what Brandon Beane did. And did he reach? Did he trade back again with the Chiefs? Like, what are we doing again? So it'll be interesting to see his strategy.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny as you say it too, because it's, the 2022 draft at first, it was just like, okay, Kyer Elam is not the guy. James Cook's rookie season was something to be forgotten. Terrell Bernard, right, as a 3rd round pick. I mean, played 1 game and was horrendous. It was like, this looks like the worst draft ever. Khalil Shakir, I set up with Pat Moran on his show. I'm like, he's just another guy. Why are you even keeping him on the roster during training camp? Like, I think I was saying they should have kept Andy Isabella over him, maybe, right? Like, so, you give it a little bit of time and those things come around. So even when you say like, oh, how are people going to react, in a week, it's like, give it 2 years before, you can really tell with some of these guys. So,
yeah. And I think to your point, Brandon, you were talking earlier about how Brandon Beane's always tried to fill those holes before the draft. I think he's kind of been the victim of his own success because more of the cap has been taken up by players that he has drafted and developed.
Yes.
So you've got players on bigger contracts and longer term contracts. Josh's contract is huge. And yes, the cap's been going up, but they have had a lot less flexibility, especially these last 2 years with Stephon Diggs' dead cap, to play in free agency. They don't have the budgets that these, bargain basement teams do to sign the top free agents at every position, or even like mediocre free agents at some of these positions. So it's like they have walked into the draft with some needs here. And even the past few years, it feels like there's more needs going into every draft, or at least more glaring holes because other parts of the roster are totally taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. Like
with good players,
like more holes are filled. And so we've been talking about the wide receiver thing for a while, cornerback and, defensive tackle are going to come up, and also defensive end, which always is a need with this team, no matter what. They're always looking
years,
to, I was going to say they haven't really, checked that box completely at any point. But so, yeah, I think he's been the victim of his own success in a little bit.
Did you see Trey White's comment about coming back to Buffalo? What he told his agent? It's like, there's only one place I'm going to play. He's like, you don't answer the phone unless it's a Buffalo number calling me.
Really?
Like, yeah, I just saw
awesome.
Saw it a little bit, a couple hours ago.
Which is cool.
I'm so glad that he's back.
Me too. Just for sentimental reasons. He could play 0 snaps this year, and I'd just be happy to see clips from One Bills Drive with him talking about the Trey White Goalie Academy. Like, I'm in it for just that. Like, if that's the floor, I'm in. And anything above that is gravy. And he was looking a little bit better towards the end of last season. So even if they're bringing him in, maybe not as a CB2, it could be special packages, but I think the ceiling being that CB2 and being serviceable is enough, because I feel like his brain just being, knowing where he's supposed to be is going to be better than what we saw out of Kyer Elam in the AFC Championship game last year.
And not for nothing, they brought Micah Hyde in to coach. I mean, Trey White can help whoever's here coming in, whether it's a 1st round pick or a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick again. And, he's going to chase down that play sheet that's blowing through the wind of the other team. So that's an asset in itself, like he did last time. So over under 1.5 interceptions for Trey White this year.
1.5? That's a tough bet. If I was a betting man, I'd go under. But if I was a Bills fan like me, I'd go over. Just full homer, full send. But let me ask you guys this. Let's go around the horn and give me your most likely position drafted with the 1st round pick. And obviously, this doesn't count if they trade out of the 1st round and make us stay up too late on Thursday just to, make us wait into Friday again. But if you had to bet, what do you think the position of that 1st round pick is? You want to start with you, Brandon?
Yeah, defense. I mean, I think it's going on the defense.
Position. Not side of the ball.
Give me a D line. It's gonna. I think Brandon Bean knows.
More specific.
Enough.
Defensive tackle or defensive end?
What about a guy that plays D end that lines up in the middle every now and then and sets a stunt and goes off outside?
If he does
so much
both,
flexibility.
if he does both, and you pick either, you win either way. So
D line. No, I think you're right, Anthony. D tackle is the most glaring spot. Where the value of the player being the best player on the board and the need can really match up together in a guy like Kenneth Grant. Maybe they have to move up a little bit for him, whether you throw in your 4th and move up 2 picks, or you throw in a 2nd and you move up 10 picks. I think that's the play. You still have that other 2nd round pick where you can get your guy. I don't know. Maybe I don't know any other guys that are mocked as a D tackle that I think would be considered the best player available besides Kenneth Grant at that position. So I'm going to say D tackle. It's not flashy, but they need it. Maybe he develops into something special. We'll see.
Nice. Pat, you got any hot takes for us on this one?
No, I mean, I would say probably defense. I'd like to see a defensive back, though, because I was going to say, not to make you feel bad, either of you guys, but how old do you think Trey White is? I was doing a little research on this.
How old?
30.
Yeah, he's what year do you think he was born in? If you were to guess,
he's probably a year older than us, maybe,
he's a 96
or 95, 96, 97,
which is
95.
A little bit crazy to think we're talking about him getting older and dinged up, and Brandon shooting
and that's us,
career best,
and that's us
in Florida.
Hey, I'm older and dinged up, and I'm a 95er. So
I don't know. I know Anthony had him mocked in the 2nd round with that cornerback from Notre Dame. I would like to see them, if the universe were to reward us with any sort of parity, I would like to see them take Matthew Golden from Texas, a smaller, fast guy, just to right the wrong that Xavier Worthy bestowed upon us. But that would be my take. So
nice. Wide receiver?
Yeah, if he's there.
All right. I like it. Pat's hot take. Watch this be the year like no one's talking about the receiver train and they finally draft a 1st round wide receiver. But I don't know. Anthony, what's your take? I mean, are you going with D tackle, what you took in the mock?
Yeah, I think I have to. And again, right, like when you're picking at 30, you just don't know what's going to happen before you. But it's like, I feel like there's enough defensive tackles that it's like, if that's what they want to address, and not that it has to be based on need, right? Like as Brando was saying before, but there should be enough guys there. The defensive tackle, I think, is the pick at 30. I mean, right, it's got to be that or cornerback. I'm thinking, like, to Pat's point, Wide receiver would be a lot of fun, and I think that would get a ton of excitement from folks. But I think it's going to be defensive tackle.
Nice. I would love a wide receiver. I'd get psyched about that. That'd just be fun to talk about, for the next 6 months or however long it is until we get preseason coming along. It's probably less than that, but I'm gonna go defensive end. I feel like what they have done recently, like we talked about how they haven't spent a premium draft asset on a one tech in years. I don't know if that's gonna, if the opportunity presents itself, it'd be perfect, but I feel like they're comfortable putting these first round picks into defensive ends now with being moved on from Von Miller, at least for now, and Greg Rousseau. You're kind of looking for who's that guy that you're going to pair with them. I don't know if what they did in free agency with that necessarily moves the needle too far for me, even with, Bosa and stuff like that. I don't know. He hasn't been on the field a ton lately. So I could still see them investing a premium asset in a D end if the opportunity presents itself. So I don't know if they'll do that, but my guess is D end. That's my wild card. I didn't want to copy
back-to-back second round picks in the end.
No, but I don't think that's too wild though either. Cause when you guys think of it too, there's a lot of guys in the last year of their deal coming up this season. Like we can talk about all the contract extensions, but Connor McGovern, David Edwards, Matt Milano, right? Joey Bosa, AJ Epinesa, Trey White, Dane Jackson, all those guys are in the final year of their contract. So, I mean, that's, we talk about some holes you have to fill this year. Like, all right, there's going to be plenty coming next year too. So that might be to the piece when you talk about how some of the fans, react. It's like, if they take an offensive guard in the second round, people will probably be losing their minds. But it's like, okay, well, maybe that's just, a sign that they don't expect David Edwards to be here after this season, or they don't think they're going to re-sign Connor McGovern. And I don't know. I try to be a little bit more reasonable in my old age, although you guys just made me feel ancient as you were all saying you're like 30 years old. And here I am sitting here. So Pat, thanks for doing the math on that one for me.
The cool thing about when Trey and Josh were drafted is, that was maybe the first time in my life that somebody my age getting drafted at the same time, right? It's like you kind of linked up and seeing them grow up, and it's like, oh my gosh, I had a hard time at school today. This guy just cashed a $250 million contract. And it's like, and then you see Trey, I couldn't imagine being at this point in my life and having to rehab those leg injuries just like he had. And it makes it real, makes it kind of closer to us, and to see them now. I mean, growing up, it was never like that. And I imagine, talking to my parents about it, and, like Jim Kelly is my dad's age and that kind of thing. And
Josh Allen's your age. Yeah.
Josh Allen's my age. Yeah. So I, a little dinged up like Trey White is, but I just want him to be good, right? I'm not trying to make you feel ancient or anything, right? I just, 30 in NFL terms is ancient too, right? I mean, that's another crazy world we live in. And it's so crazy to me that you just said, Anthony, all these guys expiring on 1 year deals next up. I never really thought about that for next year. My franchise mode brain in Madden pops up because it's like you spend the cap in this year, and then like you have all these guys you have to re-sign next year. You kind of get stuck. But that Chiefs model comes to mind where they hit on six out of their 8 picks that 1 year, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. They won the Super Bowl the next year, and they really plugged all those holes for a couple years. So this draft is so important, I think, for the Bills, even more after what you just said, Anthony, to set this window up so it's not crumbling down and you're having these mid-tier free agents trying to push it back up next year when they're trying to replace these holes. But if you can nail a couple of these picks to fill those roles, this could be a springboard for this franchise coming for the next couple of years.
Well, it's where everyone's like, oh, they're not, they don't have even 10 roster spots, or like, I don't know. People shouldn't make that assumption, right? I mean, you've got 2 4th round picks, 2 2nd round picks, 3 5th round picks. Like, I'm not saying, 4th and 5th rounders are premium spots, but, you can look at that and say, listen, you get these guys, develop them for a year, and then you can see where they are during the 2026 season. But I don't know. I even feel weird saying that because I'm in like win now mode when it comes to this team. Do whatever you have to for this season, but can't be that short-sighted. At least all the time.
If you're thinking really long term like that, you get a guy. How much is Michael Hoyt making this year on the cap? It's like $5 million, $6 million contract.
Yeah, something
per
like
year.
that.
So you got a guy like him to be a stopgap, and you take a 5th round rookie this year, and he develops. That 5th round rookie's not making $6 million on the cap next year when you might need to plug him in. So that's
or
extra
4
money
years from now.
whenever it is during his contract. So that's a good use of an asset that you can reallocate those funds. Maybe you do something bigger because you don't need to fill that hole because you have that guy on this cheap deal. So that's a good point, Anthony. I like that.
Yeah. And like there's great players in every round of the draft usually. I mean, at least one that kind of over time sticks out at, even in later rounds. And so again, like the number of darts at the dartboard sounds great to me because again, we've had all these successes with 5th round picks. And I'm not going to say that Brandon Beane is better at finding 5th round picks than he is at 1st round picks, but for whatever reason, they found a lot of value there before. So having 3 shots at the dartboard and also 2 in the 4th round and 2 in the 2nd round, like give me all the picks. I mean, just throw some darts. You don't need to trade them all. I'm sure he'll trade some of them. I don't know if he's going to trade back for more picks and then, really double up on it, because then you might be looking at, roster shortages and not have enough spots to develop these guys. Because you just want to have enough spots to develop these guys and keep them on the practice squad and hope they don't get poached, right?
Sure.
So, but
I have one more. Sorry, I have one more over/under question for you. Over and under 2.5 total trades made by Brandon Beane in the draft.
I'm gonna go under.
I was just doing some research.
To 2. If it was 1.5, I don't know which way I would have gone.
I might try to do a little research on this and see, because I would be curious to see his total amount of draft day moves by year. Because, it's different every year, because you got that Tremaine Edmonds trade up and you got, again, it depends on how the board falls. Tremaine fell. He was not supposed to be at 15 or 16, wherever they took him at. And Brandon Beane saw value there. So I would be curious with, like you said, 2/5. Maybe you do one of those, maybe 1/4. So you still get out, you leave the draft with 8 or 9 guys. You still make a couple picks. But I'm gonna have to look that up. See how many total draft day trades Brandon Beane has made in his. This will be a 7th draft, right? Because he was not here for McDermott's 1st draft.
Right.
Yeah. And it might, it's probably more than you think too. It might be like, and whatever didn't they trade back to get
pick
like
swap
Marquez
that's right.
or something like that. You know what I mean? And you'd like,
that's true.
That's not one you remember. You remember the Josh Allen trade and the Tremaine Edmonds trade,
right?
The big ones, but there's probably some of those little tinkering moves that you don't know.
Like trading up for, I think, did they trade up for Dawson Knox? Like just 2 or 3 spots, something like that.
I think they like packaged 2 4th round picks to move back into the 3rd. Yeah, they did, to move back into the 3rd round. That's a quick story. Back when for Buffalo Rumblings, I would do a podcast for every draft pick, right? So it was like immediate reaction, like a 8 to 10 minute, and some of these guys like, okay, how am I doing an 8-minute podcast on a 5th round draft pick I've never heard of before in my life? But that night, I remember I was like toothpicks, keeping my eyes open. I did the Devin Singletary one, and it's just like, all right, it's coming to the end of the 3rd round. I like go to bed. The next morning, I got like 4 messages from Matt Warren, like, hey, are you still awake? They traded up for Dawson Knox. And I was like, missed that.
Oh, no. That's late. Yeah. Brandon Beane has no regard for our sleep schedules. That is for sure. That has been proven.
I do have a little headline here, but I can't get to it because I don't have the subscription. There's a Buffalo News article that says GM Brandon Beane has made 34 trades involving draft picks in his time as the GM. Again, I don't know if that was this year or not. Totally
some of those might be picks for players in season 2.
Yeah, picks for players is 34. That's what the number says here. Could have been last year, could have been this year. Can't give you any more details because I do not subscribe to this website. But I got you a ballpark number there.
All right. So even conservatively, if you take 4 of those trades out and say that they were picks for players, which is probably more, but that's an average of 4.2 picks per draft. If this is his, well, no, I guess it'd be divided by 6 since he's only had 6 so far. So yeah, it's like 5 trades per draft. That can't be right. We'll have to redo that math on that, but
this might be worth a subscription to figure it out. But anyways,
not another arithmetic podcast over here. All right. So Anthony, I have this question for you. Is there any scenario where we would see a trade up, like somebody falls? Do you think there's somebody who's projected to go in the early teens that if they fall to like 20 or something like that, the Bills might try to make a move?
Yeah. I was grinning before when Pat brought up Matthew Golden, because I think that would be the player. Right. I think when I look at the depth around defensive tackle and cornerback, and again, you can look at any sort of rankings and list and you can see things where it's just like someone will have one defensive tackle like as a top 15 player and someone else has him at like 50. So there's this real variance that's there. But I think when you talk about Matthew Golden and what he brings, he's kind of one of one, right? He's like that unique blend of speed and size and just the ability to, serve as that vertical threat that the Bills most definitely need. And when you look at what wide receivers are getting for contracts right now, like, I don't see the Bills, people would talk about T. Higgins this year, like, oh, should they trade? Like, I don't see them giving someone a $30 million contract at this point based on the other contracts and deals that they kind of have in this space. So it's like, yeah, what you gave to Khalil Shakir, you're comfortable with. So I look at it and say, like, listen, if there is a guy that is that missing piece on offense at wide receiver, Golden is that one. And if you can get him for a 5-year cost-controlled situation here, like we said before, you've got enough other picks that you can do things with. So to me, it's like, I don't think you don't trade up for a cornerback because there's enough cornerbacks. You don't trade up for a defensive tackle because of the depth at that position this year. At wide receiver, I feel differently. And I feel like he's kind of the one of one out of this group. So if there's someone that and again, it's easy to get excited about the wide receiver position, right? A skill player on offense to make a move up for, but that would be the one guy for me.
Listen, we don't get that excited about wide receiver around here. We definitely weren't pushing off takes last year that they should go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds and even think about it in the 3rd round again. Like, that's what we were talking about last year. Yeah. So I'm 100% on a wide receiver train. And I think those guys are also easier. Like, I feel like the grades are more consistent with what a player turns out to be at that position, more so than some of these other positions. I don't know if that's just my own inherent bias or what I'm seeing, but it seems like, these top guys that go top 20 in the draft at wide receiver seem to bust at a lower rate than some of the other positions that might go that high. I don't know if that's...
We talked about this last year, John, right? It was like the top 12 wide receiver taken, or the top 12 picks when wide receivers are taken, they generally hit. And then it was like 60% from 12 to 25 and maybe like 50% from 30 to the 2nd round, something like that. We did a math chart on it. Didn't we do something on this?
I think so. But yeah, like wide receivers, you're not going to get a mysterious hit in round 6, most likely. Stevie
Johnson is mad that you just said that.
There are Puka Nakuas out there. Like, it can happen, but
I do have a thing. Always look at that one, but even last year, right? I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. was the guy I wanted the Bills to trade up.
Me too.
And, and there were others like, and again, I get it that we're saying like, no, you need to go get a Rome Odunze, or you need to get, try and get Malik Neighbors, and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. you weren't going to get. But, Brian Thomas Jr. was the most productive out of those 4, and the other 3 were all top 10 picks. So it doesn't mean that they were, bad players or won't, continue to develop or this and that. But, at least after year 1, it was the guy that went at 21 or 22 that ended up being the biggest hit so far.
Right.
The other guy that I've had in mind as of like 2 days ago, I just saw this, and I think it would be cheaper, question marks, because you got to pay him. But Jameson Williams in Detroit, like, what's going on there? Like, he's doing the same thing kind of James Cook is doing.
If he can lay off the steroids,
that seems to not really matter anymore here in Buffalo. But when he was coming out, I was just such a fan of his. I would love to have seen him get drafted by the Bills. He went like 11th overall or 12th overall. But to see why he's leaving, why he would want to leave Detroit is interesting to me. They've kind of dealt with all his stuff. He had 1,000 yards this year. He's got a 5th-year rookie option did they decline it? I think maybe they didn't want to pay him a new contract. So you see DK Metcalf went for a 2nd-round pick, right? Because you had to give him a new contract. I mean, you could probably get Jameson Williams for a 4th-round pick this year and a 4th-round pick next year, maybe a 3rd-round, 4th area. If DK Metcalf's going for a 2nd and you got to pay him. Now, this is the question, right? He's had 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard season so far, right? He's not taking Khalil Shakir's money, probably, right? He had
No, I don't. I mean, at least, and I don't know if his head is in the right place, right? To take a contract for what he probably deserves. And Brendan, you follow the Lions closer than anybody, but like, to me, it's a little bit of a red flag of like a guy wanting to leave Detroit. Like everyone, like they're having success. Jared Goff has revitalized his career. Everybody seems to love Dan Campbell. Like, they've become this, kind of like a version of the Bills, right? Like an afterthought for all these years. Now they're getting primetime games. Like, it's cool to be a Lions fan. And then you've got this guy that's just looking to work his way off the roster, where you're just like, gambling. What are you doing? Right? Like, you're not, you're not looking to, I'm trying to think of like it's not like you're on the Jets and you're trying to like work your way out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
Like you're in about as good a situation as you could possibly be. So, with that happening, that kind of has me scratching my head a little bit, and nothing to do with any of the other stuff that he's had to deal with.
I think maybe the WGR guys today or yesterday, I don't remember when I was listening to him. Maybe it was Bulldog. They were talking about at what point are we the place where a troubled player can come here and regain himself, right? The Patriot way or whatever. I don't remember who said it exactly. It made me kind of think about it a little bit because he's 24 also, and he's exactly what the Bills need, as is Matthew Golden, right? I feel like maybe Jameson Williams was a better prospect coming out, right? Coming off the ACL tear. But, I just feel like if you could get him, like I said, 3rd, 4th round pick somewhere in there. I've had Jameson Williams in my fantasy dynasty league for years, and I'm like waiting for him to really bust. And I don't know. He got 58 catches last year in 15
This
games.
is what it's really about. It's about your dynasty.
It's for me. It's for me. Come on, Brandon, make it happen.
So selfish,
Yeah. But I think, if you have Jared Goff and Josh Allen, I mean, maybe they're, I don't know that much about either of these guys.
But you bring up a good point, and I think it was the GR Morning Show that was talking about it. But really, Tyler Dunn from Go Long TD brings it up a lot. And it's just like, listen, not everyone on your team needs to be like one of the good guys, right? Like you can have, this one player, whether they're a reclamation project or, somebody that just maybe isn't the perfect culture fit. But like if you have a strong locker room, you can be okay. And I mean, listen, that's when they traded for Stephon Diggs. At least there was speculation that he was difficult and this and that. And at least for a few years, there were no issues. And, that kind of happened. So, I get the point that you're saying. It's like not everybody needs to be a good guy.
Yeah.
We got
but the other
guy.
thing is, it's like thinking about where he is now. He's in another locker room that you would say is the type of locker room that should be able to handle just about anybody, right? And so if he's having trouble in a place like that already, then maybe it's a him
it's
thing,
his own locker room,
and not
it's his
not
own.
Yeah. So it's like I don't doubt that the Bills could be a great environment for somebody to come in and play their best and be the best person and player and all that stuff. We've seen tons of players come in and be the best version of themselves. They can't seem to replicate it in other places, and we've seen the locker room survive the non-perfect culture fits and stuff like that. But again, like if it might be a him thing if he can't get along in Detroit, which is like a perfect place that I feel like any player would want to be. Then I feel like Buffalo's a lot of the same. It's not like he's like a troubled player in the Raiders organization who just needs like a good organization to embrace him and develop him and do all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder how far a second pick would get you up in that first round. How many spots that would be worth with the points? Maybe not that many. Not that many to get Matthew Golden.
They said it. They said it on GR. I believe the second round pick that we have packaged with 30 gets you to 18. I think they said it's 18.
Really? That's higher than I would have thought.
That's better than I thought too.
18 or 28. The points equal that.
Gotcha.
So, but again, if you have a guy that people are following, supply and demand does not equal that. If somebody's offering the second and a fifth, now the price just went up. So,
right. Well, Anthony, I'll ask you this. Is there one position that you think it's most important for the Bills to hit on in this draft? Is there one position where it's like maybe even take a couple swings at it? What would be the most important hole to fill with a draft pick, even if you have to take multiple swings?
And to the point we were making before, I don't know that there's something to say like, oh gosh, this is the most important. I mean, I guess to what we were talking about before, maybe it is more important to hit on something with cornerback. And it goes back to that piece of just your safety duo isn't what it was before. I mean, I can still be optimistic on Cole Bishop as a second-year player. Rapp, I think we've seen what the team has looked like without him on the field. So to compare them to Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer is not fair in any way, shape, or form. But to this point, it's like if you can get a good cornerback opposite of Christian Benford and just say to yourself, like, hey, we're good here. Right? Like we don't have to, worry
for
about
4 more years.
Like hope that Levi Wallace is good enough. And, Levi Wallace's name comes up a lot of times. Like he did a great job
he was a great ZB2
free agent, right? Like walk-on player at Alabama, like for what he's put together, like good on you. But, I think that is a piece where even though Again, you're not saying go cornerback with your first round pick. That defensive tackle to me seems like something would prioritize there. But cornerback is one where you can take multiple swings, like we've seen that happen before, and just make sure you get your guy.
Right. And because they might need a year, like you said before, like you might not ask somebody to come in and start this year and play the whole year and be your, definite CB2, but you're definitely going to need somebody next year at least, right? Unless Trey White comes back and has a hell of a season, but I don't think anyone would think that that's the most likely outcome there. So,
and you got some guys too, even that are projected, right, as potentially first round picks, and it goes to that whole like variance. So, right, it's Benjamin Morrison, who I talked about from Notre Dame in the article. Well, he's coming off a hip injury. I mean, he did a workout yesterday to show that, that he's healthy, but still, like, are you taking a rookie and just throwing them in there day one? Siobhan Revelle from East Carolina, he's another one, right? Like his season, didn't happen last year. I think it was an ACL injury. Like, okay, what will his recovery look like? So in this type of situation, these are some guys that they get talked about as like potential first round picks. Well, if you miss the entire season, you're not just going out there day one as a starter. So again, that's where a Trey White kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer that you don't have to rush things if you don't need to.
During this tenure of Brandon Beane, I feel like we've seen teams. This year's team was different than most, right? It was, we weren't sure what to expect. Didn't have the same wide receivers. Defense looked different. So for me, coming into this draft, I am curious to see something that is different than before. So I want them to do something that they haven't done yet to get something that we haven't gotten yet, Super Bowl, right? So, but the part that gets to my logic about what you're saying there is if you get a CB2 that is also a CB1 in the draft like this, you got two lockdown guys on the outside, will help your pass coverage. It will help everybody else on the defense. And then you got Taron Johnson in the slot. It's going to really funnel, take less pressure off the linebackers even. And just to have two outside guys lock up these wide receivers. And then you're looking in the division and you still have Waddle and Hill. You're looking in the AFC. I mean, the Chiefs are going to have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, and who else they got in their wide receiver room this year? They got Hollywood Brown
Marquise
back, right?
Brown.
Yeah.
So you need guys that can play here. And then if you look at the DN position, Greg Rousseau is a successful draft pick, but he's not 12 sacks a year yet guy. Is that likely to be taken at 30? Are you going to get a guy like that at 30? You never know. I mean, I feel like Greg Rousseau at 30 is like the best that you could do. I mean, just raw ability, big, tall guy. But I think at cornerback, if you get a guy that can shut down the other half of the field, it can free up a lot of what you have to do. I mean, the Bills saw a lot of one safety last year, right? They brought a lot of teams played into the box on the Bills. And I feel like that could be something the Bills end up doing if you have a legitimate second corner, and it could really help the run game that we see. Like you said, you get frustrated with these gashes up the middle, but the Bills are pretty reluctant sometimes to stack the box. They did it a little more last year with Dorian Williams, but you see with the coaches that they brought in a lot of coaches that are good at that man-to-man scheme in the secondary. And I think if you had that, you're really turning me on to the idea of a corner here to think about the chess match that you could have with all these other teams.
I didn't even say anything. You're really turning me on to this.
The corner position is a huge deal. And the guy that you said from Notre Dame coming off an injury, you look for those guys that might have a little bit of a red flag that you can work with. I mean, Rousseau played 1 year, right, at DN, and those high ceiling guys that you might have to work through it. And I think that's a cool option that the Bills have here. How do you do it? How do you play it? And Brandon Beane, I would love to be a fly in the wall.
But I think it's interesting when you have the 2 second-round picks this year, and assuming that you don't use something to trade up or to make a move, because then it's like, all right, you kind of got, and I know I'm not saying pick 30 is the same as pick 62, but again, there's a lot of guys kind of clumped into that group where it's like, okay, if you get a cornerback that can be good, right? Doesn't even have to be a home run, maybe just like a
Ronald
solid,
Darby.
Right? Like, kind of along those lines. And then if either your defensive end or defensive tackle, if those are your other 2 picks, if one of those 2 hit, right? Because I just feel like you do need that disruptive force on the defensive line to make life easier for your cornerback. And if Bruce Nolan was on, he'd be saying like, well, listen, it's the cornerback that's going to make life easier for your defensive tackle because they're going to keep that guy from getting open. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg type of piece. But right, even if you just hit 2 doubles out of those three swings, that can make a big impact for you.
Your team
For
is
sure.
much better that way.
Yeah. And I love the fact that we're getting 3 swings in the first 2 rounds when we've been short a couple swings in the last few years.
Do you think they're gonna take all 3?
I would get, like, if I had to guess, yes, maybe. I don't know. He could trade it, like he could trade back and have 4 second-round picks. I don't know. Like he could.
I kind of want him to.
They have to. I think they have to. Like when we talked about all those expiring contracts, like you're not in a position where it's, right, if you package all 3 of them, like, oh, you can get up to like number 10. Like that. I don't think that's going to help you at this point.
Right. Yeah. I got one more question for you, Anthony. Do you have any hot takes going into Thursday or this draft in general? And any spicy takes? They can be, medium takes if you need to. But
I don't know how spicy it is, but I think the Bills are going to trade out of the first round.
Oh,
I think it's going to be another one of those where it's like we're all like glued to the TV again, thinking to yourself, like, how long is this going to take? Only to get to pick 30 and have them like trade back with the Giants at pick 34 because Bean and Joe.
I saw that today.
Our boys, right? Like,
yeah,
something like that happens and it just becomes that whole wait another day type of piece. So it's not even a hot take. It's kind of like a, it would piss everybody off take.
Yeah.
That's
we'd be hot about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the fear of that is why we're recording this episode at, 9:23 on Tuesday night instead of throughout the draft like we did last year. And then just going to bed disappointed and then having to edit also that night. That was fun. So
remember when the draft used to start at noon on a Saturday and it was just like, you guys probably don't.
Nope.
It's like when I talk to somebody, at work and you're like, oh my God, did you ever see the movie Goonies? And they look at you like, what are you talking about?
Oh my God. Goonies is classic though. I feel like that's a rite of passage even for people our age. I've probably seen Goonies 10 times, 20
but
times.
As soon as it came out of my mouth when I was like, remember when the draft? And it was just like wrong crew to be asking that question to.
Oh, that's all right. That's funny. But
what about you guys though? Any hot takes?
I don't know. Pat, you got anything that you're holding in?
I mean, I think it would be really crazy if the Browns took a quarterback at 2. That would be insane.
Yeah.
Shadur Sanders to the Browns type deal, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I really haven't thought about this draft at the top of the round. Like we're so Bills centric that like I'm not even trying. I mean, Titans have the first round pick. I have no idea if they're going to trade it or not. Haven't even paid attention to the rumblings on that or anything like that. But
I feel like the players that are coming to this draft don't really know how it's going to pan out. Would they say 15 prospects are attending the draft this year because they don't know who's going to be taken where? At what position? I think of Will Levis, right? He stayed there for the whole first round and gets picked the next day. Doesn't get taken in the first round. What a nightmare.
That's so funny. I don't think I have any hot takes. Anthony, I kind of have the same thing as you, where I'm scared that they're going to trade out of the first round and I'm going to have stayed up for nothing at that point. Because what time does pick 30 come around? Like midnight. Eastern?
Yeah, something like that. And it's silly. Like you know what I mean? You wait that long just for it to happen. So I don't know.
The thing that ticks me off about the draft is because it's all scheduled out and they got to get in their commercials and they know kind of when everything's slotted in. Pick number 1 lasts a full 3 minutes, and there's no reason why number 1 should last 3 minutes. Like that pick should be in immediately.
It lasts the full 10 minutes, man.
It seems like they're on the clock, and then they go all the way through the timer before they get the pick in at the normal time like someone else would. It's like those first 3 picks, there's limited things that can happen. You should have all this predetermined. Get your pick in and call it a day. But
Anthony, do you remember when the Vikings missed the clock?
Yes. Who was it? Mike Tice, I think, was their head coach maybe. And it was just like
Byron Leftwich, the Jags take Leftwich instead. And I was reading that they wanted to save money on the first round contract. Like they knew the guy that they wanted. So they didn't want to pay him the 6th slot or whatever they were. So they waited a little bit and then they put the pick in. I thought, what a world that is. That's crazy that existed.
It is. And now it's like, it was so different then because you didn't have like the rookie wage scale, right? So, I mean, everything would be, if a left tackle was the number 1 overall pick, they immediately became the highest paid left tackle in all of football. Yeah. Just based on being a draft pick. Or it would be, we got to wait. That was with the Bills, I think, in Aaron Maben, right? Like, I know, great name to bring up. But like, when he was drafted and it was, well, he's not signing his contract yet because Michael Crabtree was signed in front of him, and he didn't picked in front of him, and he hadn't signed his contract yet. So it was, oh, well, I'm not going to sign mine until he signs his, because basically everything was slotting in. Now there aren't any of those like rookie contract holdout situations. It's a lot cleaner now, and teams aren't forfeiting their pick to pay somebody less than they would have had before. So that's crazy.
Nah, it might be like an ice cold take, but I don't think I'm gonna do it this year. I don't think I can make it.
Make it through. You can't put it on a tee like that.
Right.
I don't think I can make it up to this time, the 30th pick, man. I think I'll be snoozing. I don't know if I'm gonna make it up there. It's tough. These last couple of drafts, man, they're not easy. And that feeling last year when they traded back, I was so pissed, like just so mad that we're sitting here and it's like my alarm's gonna go off in 4.5 hours, and to see them do what? Trade with the Chiefs again? Oh my gosh, no. So, future of Brandon Beane's career. Do you think he ever makes another trade with the Chiefs on draft day?
Oh God, I hope not.
Probably not. Probably not.
Somebody's got to tell him.
But
I mean, let's chill out here.
That's what Terry needs to pull him aside and just be like, listen, like anything else is fine.
Yeah,
you could be in like the 4th round, even that's fine. But just
not the first round. That's funny. All right, Anthony, where can people find you? What are you up to these days? And where can they find your stuff? Obviously, Buffalo Rumblings articles and stuff like that.
Yeah, started writing again at Buffalo Rumblings. You can find me on Twitter at Marino and kind of checking in there all the time. And just that's where you can find me. So
nice. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun. It's nice to get you on. We got to start doing it more than once a year. I don't remember if we had you on during the season this last year, or if it was before the season started. Or last summer.
Ted Lasso draft, the last episode.
I was just going to say, I think the Ted Lasso draft was.
Oh, that's right. That was fun.
Get together. But no, when you asked, I was happy that the timing worked out, and it's always great to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, we got you at the perfect time. Like, the guy who knows more on the draft than we ever will, and so we really appreciate the time and you coming on.
Anytime, guys.
Sweet. You can find us on all platforms at Not Buff Podcast, and we'll be back next week. And hopefully we'll have some good draft picks to talk about. So until then, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.